This is Longhorn Weekly with head coach Shaka Smart coming away from Pluckers, the West Campus location in Austin. It's at this point of the program early on where we have Shaka introduce our guests, and I'm always entertained by the fact when you introduce someone who hasn't been on with us before, because you're educating everybody on that specific guest. In this case, a member of your coaching staff.
Well, usually we have a player, but today we have assistant coach Neil Berry, and excited to have him here. I've known Neil for a while, just kind of bumping into him on the road. He comes to us from Iowa State, so very, very familiar with the Big 12. Also worked for Darren Horn at a couple different stops in the past. So he's not a guy that was unknown to us at all. We had a coaching vacancy in the spring, and Neil was a guy that we pinpointed as someone that we really wanted at Texas.
Neil, what was one of or a couple of the factors that really appealed to you about this opportunity to be down here in Austin?
I think number one was the opportunity to work with Coach. I've known him for, like he mentioned, for quite a while, just kind of different interactions on the road, and obviously being in the league the past 3 years. Always had tremendous respect for him from back when we knew him as an assistant at Clemson and Florida, VCU, and then here. And I think, personally, just the opportunity to continue to grow, just to continue to see different things and be a part of something different, and the University of Texas is a great institution. So it was just an opportunity I feel like I couldn't pass on.
Shaka, explain a little bit about the networking process that goes on where you get an opportunity to get to know a guy for Neil when he's on another coaching staff, and how that all blossoms and how that works in terms of your mental file when a guy like Mike Morrell of your staff takes the head coaching job at UNC Asheville. Now you've got an opening, and why Neil comes to mind at that point for you.
Well, actually, when I was younger, so my first, when I was an assistant, in my first couple of years as a head coach, I had a much better understanding of who the really good assistants were out there, because, I was one of the guys interacting with those guys, and I was around them a lot. But as you go a little bit further with your head coaching career, you get a little bit more removed from that. But I've always tried to stay, at least to some extent, in the loop with who's doing a good job out there. And there in our business, there's people that will tell you they're doing a good job, and then there's people like Neil that go work and they don't really promote themselves. But you notice things like that. The biggest forum, I guess, for interactions is the recruiting trail. We run into each other a lot. Recruiting, as he mentioned. When he and Darren came to South Carolina, I was in the middle of my time at Clemson as an assistant coach, and those are the two big programs in that state. And so, we actually went head-to-head a little bit, but, again, gained a real respect for those guys, getting to know them as adversaries. Then I went to Florida after that, which is in the same league as South Carolina. And then obviously have followed Neil and just gotten a chance to get to know him a little bit through Darren, and Coach Kuiper through our first few years here. And you then from there you just try to really get to know someone when you're going through the interview process.
Neil, I've periodically been intrigued by this. I've watched head coaches, obviously, before games, you see the handshake, but they know each other well, and they'll visit. And I watch the assistants sometimes interact with it. Is that its own separate, I don't know, for want of a better term, its own separate club, so to speak, where you guys know each other in the circles, kind of like what Shaka was talking about, where the assistants on different staffs, you kind of get to know one another pretty well?
Yeah, I think a little bit, in the actual day of the game, I think some assistants probably talk more than others do. I think a lot of it's probably through recruiting. You just spend a lot of time just, watching games, especially at AAU tournaments, just sitting down with other coaches. So I think that's probably where a lot of the maybe networking is done, and then at other, conventions and things like that. I probably do a poor job of that, like the day of the game. I don't really I probably don't talk to the other
You're
staff.
not locking in on buddying up to another assistant?
No, probably not. Probably not. I don't do a lot.
Shaka, one thing that comes to mind also is when folks look at, say, a football coaching staff, they'll know if a vacancy comes up, well, this head coach has to he needs a new offensive line coach, or he needs a new secondary coach, or he needs a new offensive coordinator, and it might not be as as apparent to some folks when you're filling a coaching staff vacancy, and Mike Morrell on your staff for years, and yet maybe some Longhorn fans might not know exactly what some of the assistants do, although we've talked about Darren Horn and what he's done with your big guys. But when you look to fill a vacancy, how much does the specialty of what you know about them go and factor into what you're looking for when you make a hire?
It does to some extent, but we've always over the years we've tried to have staffs that are comprised of assistant coaches that are really well-rounded and can do a good job in recruiting, can do a good job with individual players, can do a good job in their position group. Neil, for instance, works with our guards. Then we try to split our team up by offense and defense. So that that was part of it. We were looking for someone that could come in and help on the offensive side. But it was really more. You want someone that can do everything. I think some staffs, the head coach says, "Hey, let me get at least 2 guys, maybe even all 3, that are just going to recruit. They're just going to find players, and that's our best chance to win." And I get that. I can definitely see,
because that's an important factor as well, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it's the old saying, recruiting is the lifeblood of your program. So, and you look at the best teams, the top 10, top 15 teams. That's one thing they have in common. They all have great players. But I don't know. I guess it's because of the way that I was treated when I was an assistant. I always felt like we want guys that are able to do everything and can be well-rounded. Obviously, recruiting is important, but also able to help move the guys forward, able to help on the basketball side, whether it's the individual development or in a specific area of the game.
Neil, how important was that to you in your conversations with Shaka about what exactly the role as an assistant coach would be for you, as opposed to just being on staff?
Yeah, no, it was huge. It was huge. I mean, obviously, coming from Iowa State and my relationship with Coach Prohm there, he actually coached me in college. I've known him for a long time. It wasn't just going to be any opportunity that I was going to leave for. And my initial conversation with Coach, I felt really comfortable about what he was looking for, and what he was looking for fit kind of what I think my strengths are. So that was huge, and I think Coach has had a ton of success of having guys underneath him go on and have successful careers as head coaches, and I think just being here in the short time I've been here, he gives each assistant a ton of responsibility and a ton of areas to kind of be like a mini, I don't know, head coach. I wouldn't want to say that, but you do have a ton of responsibility in your areas, your focus, and I think you can, you make mistakes in that. You learn and you kind of grow on the spot. So it's been really good, from a growth standpoint.
We're going to continue our conversation with Longhorns assistant coach Neil Berry when we continue here. Longhorn Weekly with head coach Shaka Smart continues in a moment. Odom's juggled it, got it back. Pass lobbed in to Jamoni McNeese, puts it up, missed it. Hayes with a rebound. Had to alter the shot. Texas with the ball, up a point, 8.5 to go. Coleman, right side, driving baseline. Osetkowski dropped it into Hayes. Slam dunk. We welcome you back to Longhorn Weekly. Our special guest during this portion of the program, Longhorns assistant coach Neil Berry. We were listening to that sequence there. Matt Coleman bringing the ball down the floor and then dishing over there Jackson Hayes from Dylan Osetkowski. I mean, that's when everything's working right, when you've got the guys that you're working with, the guards, finding those guys underneath if they're not hitting the outside shot themselves. Yeah, no, that was a great play, actually. I think Matt kind of did a great ball ahead to Dylan. Dylan drove baseline and made a great kind of pass back to Jackson, and obviously Jackson's a pretty good finisher around the rim, so it was a really good play. Anybody that listens to you can tell, not exactly a Texas accent, not from the north, obviously. From Madison, Mississippi, right?
Yep,
all right,
right outside Jackson.
Okay. Yeah. tell everybody a little bit about your path. You played at Southeastern Louisiana, correct?
Yeah, played at Southeastern Louisiana, which is in Hammond, Louisiana. I was down there for 5 years. I actually redshirted my junior year in college. From there, wasn't quite good enough to keep playing. So I knew I wanted to get into coaching. I love being around the game, and actually had an opportunity. One assistant coach who coached me my first 3 years in college joined Coach Horn's staff at Western Kentucky when Coach Horn first got the head coaching job there. I stayed in contact with him, and Billy Kennedy, who's actually the head coach of Texas A&M, was my college coach. And the summer before my senior year, I told him that I wanted to get into coaching. And, back then he was like, well, a great way to do that is just to get out and go work as many camps as you possibly can. And the rules were different back then with what we could actually do as players in the summer. So Coach let me go and work a bunch of different camps, Western Kentucky being one of them, and kind of started the relationship there. Played my senior year, and then actually went back up and worked camp again at Western Kentucky that year. They had a GA position open, and joined the staff, and it's kind of been running around since.
Well, there's an old coaching adage that says the move from being a player to a coach is directly proportional to how much talent you have when you're on the floor. Now, that's an old phrase, but also I know there are guys who played the game who already had that presence of mind, even when they were an active player, to think, my next step for me is as a coach. I want to be. I mean, did you, even when you were an active player, did you have that kind of desire, understanding that was where your future was in this game?
Yeah, no doubt. I hope Coach Kennedy would say that was probably my strength, was just kind of being maybe an extension of him on the floor. And I always enjoyed watching the game and just seeing behind-the-scenes stuff, even when I was younger, just kind of what, just watching different people practice and coach and things like that. So, yeah, it was something I always wanted to
I always enjoy hearing coaches talk about their ladder that they climb through this. And you mentioned about working all the different camps, and a lot of folks may not realize the many miles and the many stops that a lot of people have to work their way up the coaching chain. And then you got a chance to work with Coach Horn at Western Kentucky. Tell folks a little bit about what that experience was like, and you followed him on to South Carolina from there as you continue to kind of move your way up the coaching ladder, so to speak.
Yeah, it was a great experience. I think it was really good for me coming from being a player to then working for Coach Horn, and there's a lot of different responsibilities that came that you as a player you just don't realize all the stuff that goes into it.
Give an example of some for folks who don't understand. As a grad assistant or as a young assistant, things that you would do that aren't really in the plain sight of, say, the college basketball fan or even follower.
Back then. And it was pretty advanced even when I got into it, but film exchange was a really, really important thing. Just collecting film on opponents. Now it's just like a click of a button and you get a game. Back then it wasn't quite that easy. There's a lot of things that you did, preparation with sending out letters to teams you're getting ready to play, and FedEx packages, and you didn't always have everybody's cell phone number back then, so trying to track down games and get videos, it was not easy.
How about the cooperation element? Was it relatively cooperative, or did you have you just knew, or you were told, like, old Coach so and so, he doesn't give you exactly what you need there?
Yeah, most of the time it was. Because most schools and coaches are they need the same thing back, whatever game it was, but. Yeah, it was just a lot of stressful hours.
Yeah, well,
make sure you get those games.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'm always been impressed with is, and you talk about the technological advances, immediately after a game, win or lose, if our whole collective group is on the road and we're getting on the charter flight, we're settling in at the plane, you and Jay Lucas and Coach Horn, the whole coaching staff, and Shaka, obviously, you're all sitting down, and immediately the laptops are up, and immediately you're diving into the game just completed and the next opponent. And I guess that speaks to the technological advances.
Yeah, it's amazing. And we're fortunate we have 4 graduate assistants and student managers that do an awesome job and do a ton of work behind the scenes of just getting that stuff on computers and clipped up, and our film coordinator, also Northcutt, does an amazing job as well, and just keeping us all up to date.
When you look at that, you think, boy, if I had that when I was doing this, I'd be way ahead of the game right now, right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Is
each
it
way, so.
Is it the goal? I always ask an assistant coach when he's on with us that down the road you want to be a collegiate head coach. That would be the goal, because I always hear head coaches, and I've heard Shaka say it as well, that a head coach really doesn't want coaches on his staff who don't ultimately want to be head coaches down the road. But is that your goal?
Yeah, if that's the path, for sure. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a desire. I would love to have the opportunity to do that. But if that's in time, it'll be in time, and so I love the opportunity to do what I'm doing now. And, I think it's been great to work for different head coaches and just learn and see different things. There's a lot of different ways to have success. Some kind of key components, all, kind of across the board, but a lot of different ways. So, but yeah, that would definitely be a desire if it's there. So.
Appreciate you dropping by. Thanks for joining us, Neil.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
All right, Neil Berry, Longhorns assistant coach. Shaka Smart will rejoin us coming up when Longhorn Weekly continues here on the Longhorn Network and the Longhorn IMG Radio Network.